Hello, podcast listeners. First up, thank you so much for listening to and supporting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. We love doing it and we love getting the amazing comments in from all of you. Just a quick reminder that the Your Success book is out now on amazon.co.uk and amazon.com. It's currently available in both paperback and Kindle, and the audiobook will be coming out in 2019. Head to tiny.cc/yourbook to check it out. That's tiny.cc/yourbook to check it out. Now, on with the podcast.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Daniel Priestley, thank you for joining us on Your Success Podcast.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So you've got a really impressive track record in business. Can you tell us about the first time you knew or you thought that you were an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I can remember it very clearly. I was 10 years old. We had a kitchen fire in our house, and a whole bunch of stuff was damaged, and everyone was safe, but there was these damaged things, and I got it in my head I was going to clean these up and have a garage sale and sell them all. And on the night before the garage sale, I realized I didn't have enough stuff for a proper garage sale. So I went round to all the neighbours and did a 50-50 joint venture split with them to see if they would put stuff into my garage sale. And the moment that I remember most was this guy came up to me and said, how much for the microwave? I said, it's $25. And he said, I'll give you $15. I said, oh, no, it's $25. And he said, look, I want to talk to your dad. So I went and got Dad, and Dad came out and he said, listen, I want to pay $15 for this microwave, and your son's not budging. And Dad just looked at him and he said, listen, it's his business. And he turned around and walked off. And I was like, wow, it's my business. And it was. I then looked at him and said, okay, it's 30 now.
You felt empowered, right?
I felt very empowered, and at the end of the day I had $300, which in 1991 was enough to buy a fluorescent green BMX bike, a Sega Master System. Like I was seriously rolling. Like I was. If it was the Instagram generation, I would have had 10,000 new followers just for the bling.
Followers is the new currency, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
People say that every person's got a book in them. You've got 4 books in you, apparently, Daniel.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the 4 books and how they fit into your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so I never set out to be an author. I just recognized that a lot of my mentors and heroes were authors and that they'd written a book. So I kind of got it in my head that I was going to write a book myself. And I found the process to be so valuable, just bringing back memories, looking at the different insights and lessons that I'd learned. So in my early 20s, I started a business that went very fast growth. It went from 0 to $1 million and then 1 to 10 million in sales very quickly.
Which business was that?
Well, it was called Triumphant Events, and we ran event marketing and event management campaigns, but we would actually take a stake in the rollout of products. Doesn't really kind of display the business model. The business model was that we would partner with a company that wanted to do a roadshow and a rollout for a high-value product, such as a franchise, and then we'd do an East Coast rollout, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. So that business, 1.3 million in the first year, and then it got up to about 10 million before I was at age 25. And, we were making $1 million a month in sales. So anyway, that was such a roller coaster. So years later, I started writing about some of those ideas and getting it out of my head. And I actually went back to a particular time in my journey where I had a mentor, and I was 19 years old and I was just dropping out of university and getting started. And all these memories came back of how much of an amazing mentor this guy was, and how much, he was giving me lessons and he was giving me challenges to complete. So I started writing all those challenges down and doing a bit more blogging. And then, I ended up writing the book. And now I say to people, the book that changes your life the most is not one you read, it's one you write. It's when you go and write a book that your life really changes. It changes on many levels. It changes because you discover and acknowledge the value that you're sitting on, the mountain of value that you've got in your story. But number two, you've got a format that allows you to scale that out to a lot of people. So you've got this ability to, if someone in Morocco says, "Oh, I'm interested in what it is that you do," you can drop a book in the mail to them, and the amount of opportunities that suddenly start coming out of that. When people Google you, they see you on Amazon. So the book that changes your life the most is not something you'll read; it's something you'll write, and that's become more true than ever, because there's so many books coming out, and you can listen to them on Audible, and you can read them, and all this sort of stuff. You can digest so much content. And it's so easy to just kind of jump from book to book to book to book, and it almost becomes highbrow entertainment. But there's something different that happens when you write.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. So can you just talk us very briefly about the 4 books? And I know that they fit into a sort of a journey of an entrepreneurial business.
Yeah, so there's a predictable entrepreneur journey, and the entrepreneurial journey obviously is starting with an idea or a concept and developing an entrepreneurial mindset that's different to the mindset that you got from school or from a job, and then venturing into that world of entrepreneurship, building a business and a small team. So that book is called Entrepreneur Revolution, and it's about develop an entrepreneur mindset and start a business that works. And it really takes you through me dropping out of school at 19 or university at 19, and then building a 7-figure business within a few years. And everything, all of the lessons about that early stage of business were in that book. And then there's a book called Key Person of Influence, and this is about establishing yourself as an influencer in your industry, being known, liked, and trusted and recognized in your industry as someone who's worth bringing into conversations and approaching about deals, and to become that go-to person. Once you're a key person of influence, you start thinking about the concept of leverage. So you think about, how can I reach more people? And the structured approach for doing that is campaigning and promotions. So I've written a book called Oversubscribed, which is about the importance of getting your business oversubscribed through campaigns and promotions. And then the final book is really more recently what's been on my mind, which is scaling. I run a global business. We have about 60 employees across 12 time zones. We have operations in Sydney and Melbourne and Singapore and London and USA. And then we also across different industries, so I've got the accelerator business, but also we've got within the group, we have businesses that build IT projects and a business that does film production, and these businesses are now, pretty reasonably sized businesses as well. So I started thinking about, well, how do you get the right result even when you're not in the room? How do you scale a business? How do you have a business that takes on a life of its own? And I found that there are 24 assets that you need to put into the business so that it has a life of its own. In the same way that a house needs to have plumbing and electricity and foundations and a roofing system, there are all these things that have to go together in order to make a house that is valuable. Well, there's 24 things that have to go into having a business that's valuable and that scales. So that's been my entrepreneur journey. Entrepreneur Revolution, Key Person of Influence, Oversubscribed, 24 assets. And now I'm halfway through writing a book called Doubling Speed. And doubling speed is about maintaining momentum. And I look at bands like Coldplay, who play 80,000 people 3 times a week, and Roger Federer, who turns up and just does the tennis circuit every single year. And I look at these enduring brands like Rolex and Coca-Cola and Nike, and I'm looking at, how do you stay fresh? How do you innovate? How do you reinvent through each double? So if you double a business 10 times, even if you start very, very, very small, you end up with a very, very big business. You end up with if you start, I think, off the top of my head, I think if you start at £50,000 in year 1 and you double 10 times, you end up at like 30 or 60 million. It's huge. So the real question is, how do you progress through each double? So I'm writing a book about doubling speed because that's what's on my mind at the moment.
That's really exciting.
Well, something you just said, Daniel, really resonated with me, and I'm sure it will with Mo, is that when we wrote our book, Your Success, it was a really great journey to go through that, because you do discover a lot about yourself. And what you said there really hit home, because, you don't realise the the mountain of info, shall we say, and the fact that you still have a lot to learn. So you're constantly learning and sharing, and that's it, right? Inspiring others.
Well, you learn so much in the writing process. You actually fill in all your gaps.
Yeah, definitely. So we're about to start writing our second book, How to Sack Off Your Boss. And we know that you've written 4 amazing bestsellers, and you're about to write your 5th. Do you find that the book writing process mirrors where you are at the time professionally?
Oh, yeah. I just write about what's going on in my head. And I'm writing about the problems that I'm solving, and I'm selfishly doing that because I'm exploring a concept. I'm exploring an idea. So, it's wonderful for me to be writing doubling speed right now because it's just getting me to really pick apart the stories of, okay, so how did Nike go from 10 to 20 million? Do you take an approach like Rolex where you keep the product incredibly similar and only innovate very, very small amounts, which is Rolex and Lego and Coca-Cola and those kind of businesses? Or do you try and radically reinvent, which is the best strategy? So I'm looking at different brands and what they've done. So some brands have to radically reinvent themselves. And there's time that works. And then there are brands that they get the formula right and they just show up powerfully and consistently. Anyway, that's a question that I've had in my mind with my business, and through the process of writing this book, I'm answering that.
Amazing. We'll look forward to reading that one as well. And just on that, the book writing process itself, obviously you've written 4 now and you're going to write another one. How do you actually go about writing it? Do you lock yourself away? Do you do it over a year? Do you get it done in a week?
Initially, I was writing on planes because I was flying constantly between London, Singapore, Sydney, and Melbourne. So the Sydney to Singapore flight is 9 hours, great for writing. The London, Singapore is 13 hours. So I was just getting myself in the habit of doing 4 or 5 hours of writing before watching the movies or having a nap or any of that sort of stuff. So I'd just force myself just to make the first part of the flight a writing. And then, now I write typically at home. And a few things. I let everyone in the house know that I'm in writing mode, and just give me this amount of time, and this is the time when I'll finish, and I promise you I'll finish at that time. I grab myself a plunger of coffee, so I've got a good 2 coffees lined up, and I have one playlist. So I will listen to typically a trance album that doesn't have.
It works, right?
That's
it
what
works.
I have to be in silence. Yeah. Angelos is.
Yeah. I love beat.
I've got instrumental trance. Nothing with words or nothing with complex words. But what I'll do is I always write to the one playlist, and it'll be the same 7 or 8 songs. But I know this sounds ridiculous, but as soon as I get those headphones on, and as soon as that track starts, that first track of the playlist, it takes me back into the book. So it's almost like a trigger or an anchor for I put the headphones on, and it's like the rest of the world trances out, I trance in, and I'm in the book very rapidly. And I found that to almost halve the amount of time that it takes me to get into writing mode. And it's a silly little tip. I'm also not a huge fan of. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of software. I'm incredibly skeptical when someone says to me, what CRM system do you use? And I go, honestly, it's like asking a builder, what drill do you use? It's not about the drill. It doesn't matter. Is it a Black & Decker drill? Is it a Phillips drill? It's a drill, right? And a good builder can build with, a bloody hand drill. Yeah. So I normally take the approach of I don't like software. I don't like easy options. I don't like shortcuts. I like things to be hard. And with the exception that I discovered this software program called Scrivener which actually really has helped me organize my thoughts. And it kind of goes against my normal way, but Scrivener has been brilliant for being able to reorganize chapters and move thoughts around and create that sort of stuff. So that's another little hint that I've found helpful.
Amazing.
What's that called? Sorry, Daniel.
Scrivener.
Right. Okay.
Try that.
Yeah. Well,
we used some like mind mapping, didn't we, when we did ours, and that really helped to sort of organise thoughts and that kind of thing.
And what's interesting is that after we peer reviewed it, we restructured the entire book, and it made it so much better. So just because you start at point A doesn't mean it's going to finish at point A, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the reason Key Person of Influence came out first as my first book that I released, but I'd written 17,000 words of Entrepreneur Revolution, and it morphed into this whole thing about key people of influence, because that had been such a big, important part of my story, my journey. I'd been promoting these famous people on stage. So the book kind of went through where I started and getting started in business and putting together a team and getting the mindset. And then it starts talking about key person of influence. And within about 30,000 words in, I'm writing all about key person of influence and what that is. And it just kind of dawned on me, this is 2 books. So I had to dump the 17,000 words off the front, start the book with Key Person of Influence. I launched Key Person of Influence, and then I got picked up by Wiley, where they said, we'll have you got another book that you can do? And I went, actually, I've got 17,000 words. I could start there.
Yeah, amazing. That's really, really impressive. I've heard you talk about this on other podcasts, and I wanted to ask, how do you balance the sort of long-term asset that you're producing in the book and the podcast that you go on and appear as a guest with the sort of short-term needs of the business? I guess it's easier now that you've got a much higher level role, but maybe earlier on when you were more of an operator in the businesses, it's that long-term, short-term thing, isn't it? Because I think that's what I'm thinking about. We're going to write the next book, but I need to make sure I stay focused on driving the business as well.
Yeah, so I've always I've got this thing that I do called a perfect repeatable week, and the perfect repeatable week is based around our sales targets. So we have internally, we now call this LAPS, and LAPS stands for Leads, Appointments, Presentations, Sales. And you're not allowed to really do anything in the business if you're not doing the LAPS. So in our London office, we have a minimum standard of 60 leads coming in per week, translates into 12 appointments, 10 presentations, 2 sales, core business sales. And that's every week. That's our minimum standard. We blitz it some weeks. But 2 weeks ago, I looked at our LAPS dashboard. I don't go into the office very much anymore, but I always look at the LAPS dashboard every day. And I looked at the LAPS dashboard for the week, and it said that the London office had done 57 leads, 3 short of 60. So I called a little emergency meeting and just went in and had a 2-hour meeting with the team. It's funny because 3 leads short, but it's like, for me, it's like as soon as that slips, it's the beginning of the end. So we went in and we brainstormed it. We really talked about, what was different this week. Our average for the year is closer to 80. Why did we have a 57? What is where are we advertising? Where is the marketing? What's going on here? So we start talking this through. And what was really interesting is not only did we kind of figure out where the problem was with that, which was pretty easy to solve, we actually came up with an innovation as to how to use software and systems to get more people to go from lead to an appointment just by booking themselves in, using calendar links and stuff like that. And that has resulted in almost doubling the amount of appointments that we're booking every single week, just in the last couple of weeks. I mean, that'll have a huge impact on the business. But I guess what I'm saying is that I see a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, and we work with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, and I actually ban them from doing all the big stuff. So no books, no podcasts, none of this sort of stuff. If you're not doing your laps, we have, for early stage businesses, we say business comes out of chaos, and it's concept, audience, offer, sales. It's basically drill the basics. What's the concept that you're selling? Who's the audience? How do you get in front of them? What's the offer that you're making at the price point, etc., and how are you selling it? And the sales part, the S of that is the leads, appointments, presentation sales. So that LAPS fits in there. But sometimes people are like, oh, I'm working on an Instagram account type thing. And it's like, you just don't need it yet, right? I just want you to hit, because for most early stage businesses, the first milestone is the VAT threshold. The VAT threshold puts you in the top 45% of businesses. It gets you past halfway. All I want my early stage companies that I'm working with to focus on is hit the VAT threshold, £7,500 per month, or maybe $12,000, $10,000, $12,000 per month. But when we break it down, most of the companies only need to make 3 sales of £2,500 per month, and if they hit 3 sales of $2,500, they're across the VAT threshold, and now we can play with other stuff. Now we can get out the cool toys. But it's 3 sales of $2,500 a month is my first intense focus for most of my clients.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I always like to think that you've got to have the core business that pays the bills. That the podcasts and the books are really, really fun to do, and it's a really good long-term.
It's a scaling strategy. Yeah, it's a strategy for reaching a lot more people when you have to.
Yeah.
Most people could make 3 sales a month just off the contacts on their LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Great. Well, that sort of leads on to the next. You were talking about sort of where it puts you in the top percentage of businesses, which leads on to our next question. You recently posted about the top income distribution in the country. People will be surprised at, so I'm just going to read that out. So top 20% is 38K plus. Top 10% 51K plus, top 5% 72K plus, top 1% 163K plus, and then top 0.1% 351K plus. And then you said below that the key to remember is that functional skills get you to the top 10%, but no further. It's the soft skills or vital skills that move you towards being a key person of influence and further up that. So can you just explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in every industry, you've got the functional skills. If you're a photographer, knowing which lens to use, the aperture, the f-stop, all of those kind of things, they're the functional skills. And of course, if you're going to be a key person of influence, you have to have those functional skills. If you're, whatever it is, if you're a consultant, there's certain functional skills that you need as a consultant. There's certain business models that you need to understand, or Excel spreadsheets that you need to be able to produce. All of those things are very much the functional elements of the business. And you can rise through the bottom 90% into the top, sort of get close to the 10% by being better and better functionally. So having more and more functional skills, being a better photographer. But there comes a point where all people kind of, the difference between, the functional skills actually is so marginal that most people, unless you're an absolute, virtuoso, most people can't tell the difference between, someone who is, good and someone who's great. And there's also there's only a limited amount of work you can cut your teeth on that will go to people with just functional skills, and then the next breakthrough, you're not even included in the room. So what happens in the top 10% especially is you have to work on a different set of skills, which is what we call the soft skills or vital skills. The word vital means irreplaceable, and the word vital also means life force. So it's the irreplaceable life force of your industry, the irreplaceable life force of what you do. And these are the really important skills. And we break it down to the 5 Ps: pitching the vision and pitching the work and pitching what it is that you do with great value, publishing content, creating products and finding products to innovate, raising your profile, becoming more known, liked and trusted, and doing joint ventures and partnerships. So you look at someone like Richard Branson. Branson's only doing those 5 things. He's pitching the vision, he's publishing content, he's choosing what products Virgin will use, he's raising his profile, and he's doing partnerships. So he's doing those 5 Ps. He's not learning how to fly planes. He's not, figuring out how to do the finances and the accounting. He's just focused on the 5 Ps. So it's actually becoming more and more important than ever to get these things right. And what's happening in all industries is that the bottom 50% of the industry is it's getting so hard, really so hard and competitive to just make any gains in the bottom half. If you're in the bottom half of your industry, you're going to have to work super hard to get yourself across the 50% line. And you'll have to, almost nothing will work. You'll try stuff and it won't work. So I see these young guys starting out and they read a book about ClickFunnels or, some passive income strategy. And they go out and they do everything that it says in the book and they get zero engagement, zero interest, zero connection. It just doesn't work. And then you have to work really, really, really hard to get the functional skills. And then no sooner have you worked really hard to get the functional skills, you actually discover that there are some brilliant people, amazing people who have better skills than you, who are charging £15 an hour online to do exactly what you can do. And you're sitting there looking at their work going, well, I can't even do that. And they're charging £15 an hour. So the bottom half of the industry is so hard and so competitive and nothing works. And you have to make gains in you have to really hustle and put in the effort to just keep improving yourself. Then you've got the next 40%, 45%, where you passed the halfway mark, but you've now, I described the bottom half as nothing works, almost nothing works. And then the next half is everything will work if you're working really hard. So you've got to really crank that handle. You've got to really do your time and really, do all that. And then this weird thing happens, especially in the top 5%, and it's weird, which is you hit this new level where everything works, everything, and it's all easy and it's effortless. And you almost have to screw it up in order to not be flying. So an example is, this morning I've gotten up, I've been in a complete bit of, getting the kids out to nursery and, all this sort of stuff. And I've just jumped out of the shower, haven't done my hair, right? And already we're having
see Daniel looks great.
We're having a podcast and we're talking about some amazing stuff. You're going to blast this out to, hundreds of people. And I sit there and I go, God, I didn't, this appointment for us to talk just magically ended up in the diary. Susie organised it. And then, we're having a chat and it'll go out to hundreds of people. And it's I didn't try hard. In the early days, I had to try hard to get opportunities. And now, my diary is just always full of great stuff and it just gets better and better and faster and faster. And the amount of money people throw at you when you hit the top 5%, people are sitting there going, oh, can you come and do a speaking gig? And you go, okay, yeah. And you earn more in a speaking gig than most people earn in a month. Yeah. And it's just down the road and you jump on the tube, wander on into a hotel for an hour. It's like being a high-class escort or something like that. You wander into the hotel and you an hour later you walk out and you've earned more than people earn in a month. So it's this kind of weird reality where the bottom half struggles so hard to just get to the top half. The next 45% work hard all the time and it's slowly paying off, and then you hit slipstream, bang, top 5%, and away you go, and it's weird.
Do you think you can fast track it, or do you always have to go through that bottom part?
Yeah, no, you can definitely fast track it. You can definitely fast track it, and the reason is because the world is so hard right now because there's a million things you could focus on, and there's only a very few things you should focus on. So especially in the world of entrepreneurship, it's very easy to look at what Gary Vaynerchuk does and say, oh, I should get a cameraman following me around all day and putting out all this content and, doing all that sort of stuff. And maybe that's the right thing to do if you start with a family business that's $3 million and you're scaling it. Maybe it's not the right thing to do. And in fairness to Gary, he talks about going down to garage sales and flipping stuff that you buy in a garage sale and selling it for more money online as a way to get started. He does talk about, certain things, but maybe that's not the right thing to do either. So it's very, very difficult to know what is the right thing to do at each stage of the journey. When we work with our clients, it's chaos method for the first £85,000. So concept, audience, offer, sales. Once you hit the VAT threshold, we're going into two things: key person of influence and building a small team around you. And then we're going into campaigning and promotions, and then we're going into digital transformation and scaling. And it's like we're just going through, and it's paint by numbers. There's 24 assets in order to scale. We're going to figure out which ones you've got and which ones you haven't. We're going to make them one at a time. If you put that level of focus around, you absolutely fast track. Like, of course, you save yourself, decades. But very few people have that level of focus where they've got a plan that they're working to.
Do you find entrepreneurs sometimes get very frustrated because they want to be in the that 5% slipstream, but they haven't quite understood they have to go through that process of hard work to get there?
Yeah, and also maybe it can be more insidious than that. Maybe they are working hard, right? Maybe they're working all the time, and they're sitting there getting really frustrated, and they just don't recognize that at this particular time, the people who are in the top 5% are leveraging assets. They've got assets, and that's the unfair thing. If, like, for example, there's probably 400 or 500 videos of me on YouTube, and doesn't really matter what I do. Every day, a couple of hundred people are going to watch a video on YouTube, and they're going to contact the office, and they're going to do a scorecard and talk to us about it. And there's 100,000 books sitting out there in the marketplace of key person of influence, and people pick it up and they read it and they get in touch. So there's an install base of assets, which is why it's now easy or my experience is easy. My experience has changed. Without those assets, you're building assets. There's only really two jobs in entrepreneurship, which is to build a market-ready, market-accepted asset, and to sweat it, to make it perform. And that's really it. That's it, to innovate something and to make it sweat, make it perform. And and that's very easily said, and it's very hard to do.
Amazing.
Can you tell us a little bit about Dent, which is your successful business, and what you do and what that does as a business?
Yeah, so Dent is a business accelerator that runs in Australia, Singapore, UK, and the USA. We've had 3,000 entrepreneurs go through the program, and the program is a very structured program. We have a partnership with a university that credits 50% of a master's degree just by going through the Key Person of Influence Accelerator, for example. And we have really high-level entrepreneurs, people who have built multi-million, multi-hundred million, billion-dollar businesses who come in and do the training and the workshops with our clients. We take them through a mentoring and collaboration peer group process where we're all working on the same thing at the same time. Typical accelerator is about 9 months, and a cohort is about 60 to 70 entrepreneurs who go through together. And we create a high-performance environment, and inside that environment, you get total transformation of your business. So you begin to stand out, you scale up, you make a positive impact in the world, you select a United Nations global goal and start doing something towards it. You make more sales, you get higher margins. All of those things start happening because there's a structured way of approaching all of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we write about in the book about the importance of sort of ongoing education and never constant learning and growth, and never accepting that you know it all and stuff like that. Sounds absolutely brilliant in terms of progressing yourself along. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be interested in that as well, following up. So going on a slightly different tack now, Angelos is about to become a father, literally like the next few days, potentially.
Congratulations. Wow, congratulations.
For the first time. Is it 3 kids you've got?
I do.
Yeah, so have you got any tips for him and our listeners on parenting?
How honest should I be? So let me get real. So the first 6 months for me of my first child was really hard. Obviously, meeting a baby for the first time, it's an incredibly overwhelming and emotional experience, and there was definitely that. But then the reality of it kicked in pretty quickly within a week or two. And for me, the reality was that life as I knew it was over. And that was that I'd ended a chapter and I was beginning a new chapter. I was in a fantasy that I could just keep living the way that I was living, traveling around the world and, gold frequent flyer on 2 airlines, working whenever I want to work, dropping everything because a good opportunity came up and just going off and doing it. And I very much lived in that I didn't even consider that would change. For me, what happened is that the reality set in, and we had a baby that had reflux, which meant he cried all the time when he was digesting food or when he was about to poo, and that was for like months. This really severe acid reflux thing. So I had a screaming baby a lot of the time. A lot of the time I'm standing there in the middle of the night with a screaming baby that's screaming for 3 or 4 hours of the night, crying and won't settle. And you can put up with that pretty well for a night or two, and then a week or two, and then a month or two, and it becomes hard. And you go, wow, that's really hard. So around the 6-month mark, I actually felt probably the most depressed I'd ever felt, that my life was over as I knew it. The relationship with my wife had changed. I wasn't enjoying this screaming baby. And I was very sorry for myself. And then I turned a corner and his reflux shifted and my mindset started to adjust and started to shift. And I actually started to discover that I became a lot more focused in my work, and I realized how much time I wasted previously because I could. And I also realized how much I actually had a much deeper connection to the world now that I had a child. And then through the next 6 months, I lifted up out of that, kind of sorry for myself, depressed kind of like little state, and actually started to find my rhythm as a dad. And also I think dads are actually sometimes 6 to 9 months behind mum. Mum has been bonding physically with the baby for 6 months, right? She's constantly getting kicked and, prodded and a knee here and a foot there. And, she's very physically in touch with the baby for 6 months longer than you are. So for me, the bonding kind of, in the movies, you have a baby and you immediately feel like a dad and you immediately bond. For me, it took 6 months to feel those, to feel those in a big way. And then it got better and better and better and better and better. And now, I've got 3 and I've got, my oldest is 4 and a half. And now it's like, I think to myself, just stay this age because it's so perfect. It's so amazing. It's so great. And then he moves on 6 months later and he's even more amazing. He's even better. And, it just gets better and better and better. And it's wonderful. And I say all of that because there's so many people just speaking about the positive sides of being a dad, and very few people talking about the challenge and the realities and the shift and the change, and also the embarrassment of not feeling it straight away. And and you may have a very different experience to me, but that's my experience. And it's hard, but it's also strangely, what's really weird is it takes up a lot of time and it's hard, and yet since becoming a dad, I've become way more successful. I've achieved all the things that you think you would achieve, but never kind of get around to, because now I'm a dad. I'm way more focused, and and also I feel like men. I don't know. Maybe I'm just generalizing here about men, but I feel like men need to rise to a challenge. And if you don't have a challenge that's big in your life, it's so easy to be like Peter Pan and just like men without kids. Life is just so freaking easy. Like you literally just travel around, make money, do whatever you like, eat what you like, drink what you like, go to the gym, party when you want to party, meet people. Like life as a man in the Western world is, you're just spoiled. You live better than kings and queens of ages gone by. And then, but the downside of that is that you don't have this big challenge to rise to. And for me, fatherhood was a challenge that I really, it was the first time I'd been really challenged and had no choice but to rise up. It's not something you can, easily just go, that was a bad idea, It really made the step up. Have I just scared the shit out of you?
Yeah. A little bit. I'm sensing my freedom. I know it is going now, Daniel. So thanks
It'll make me more focused.
Yeah,
it's fine. So
I'm finding that it's sharpening my resolve a little bit with my business, because now I'm responsible not just for myself and my wife, but I've got a little one and probably more.
Yeah.
And I want to leave them a legacy. So it's actually encouraging me to do better, to rise to the challenge, like you said.
Yeah, brilliant. Let me know how you go with it, and if you hit a low point, feel free to talk to me about it. Because it passes pretty quick.
Yeah, cool. And you sort of touched on it there, but we talk about obsession versus balance in the Your Success book, because it's something that's come up through the podcast that we've done and that we talk about ourselves. Do you have to be obsessed with something to be successful, and how does that change when you have kids? How do you have the balance? How do you personally have the balance? So you got an opportunity, I know it's quite last minute in terms of speaking on stage with Gary Vee, and you've had other equally and better opportunities that come up. How do you make a judgment call? Like you say, in the past, you're spoiled and kind of like, drop everything, I'm going.
Yeah.
Now it's like actually.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got to be something that, in that case, I had to make sure that Elena was happy with that and that she was encouraging for me to go. And genuinely, I would have passed up the opportunity had it not been right. I pass up a lot more these days, and I just have a higher bar as to what I get involved in, especially if it means leaving the house, or traveling in any way. I think you need to go through my experience is you need to go through periods of obsession. So you need to be obsessively, like if you're in product creation mode, you need to be obsessing about the design of the product and trying to find the flaw and fix it. And with that said, sometimes the best ideas hit you when you're not trying. So having a little bit of downtime, being, sitting on the floor playing with a bunch of Duplo is sometimes when you go, actually, I know what I need to do here. So that's kind of cool. And the other thing that I always would want to bring into the conversation there is that intensity is a really good thing, provided you recognize that you're engaged in a marathon, not a sprint. Like entrepreneurship, it's, you do not want to burn yourself out early, and you want to recognize, you want little wins along the way. You want lots of little wins, but pitching something into existence, it's 1,000 pitches. It's 1,000 good pitches. That huge deal you heard someone else do, what they don't tell you is that they started that process maybe 18 months ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And it started with getting out and pitching an idea 2 or 3 times in a week, and then they've been pitching that idea 2 or 3 times a week for 18 months, or they've been, they went down one path and that didn't work, and they went down another one and that didn't work, and they went, and they fixed the thing and they reinvented the thing. And you're sitting there and you're going, oh, wow, so-and-so just, sold the company for £11 million. That's pretty awesome. And you go, yeah, but that company was started 15 years ago, and that deal has taken 18 months to put together. Like, it sounds awesome, but that was a marathon. That wasn't a sprint. No one just came along with 11 million and just dumped it. There was there was something that there's the marathon element to that. So you never want to burn yourself out.
Makes a lot of sense.
And like you say, Daniel, people tend to see the front end of success, right? And they kind of ignore or can't see what's actually happened, the sacrifices, the hard work, the perseverance that's gone on for years and years, sleepless nights, all of the risks that you've had to take. But then suddenly for 20 million, it's like, wow, that seems easy.
Overnight.
Yeah, overnight success, right?
Yeah.
Cool. We ask every one of our interviewees, what does success mean to you? So Daniel, what does success mean to you?
I think success for me is very tied in with gratitude. Success is noticing how good things are. Success is recognizing the deep levels of fortune that I've been afforded, and not being too tuned out from that. A lack of success is being ungrateful or being obnoxious, selfish little shit, despite how good things are. And for me, ultimate success means feeling that I've made the most of these very unique times that we live in. So I feel incredibly fortunate to be born at the exact moment that I was born, because had I been born earlier, too much earlier, there wouldn't have been the ability and the technology to do what I've done. And then had I been born a little bit too much later, I wouldn't have had the grounding in traditional business that I had, the newspaper advertising, the picking up the phone and making telephone sales, knocking on people's doors, physically door knocking. Like some of that non-tech stuff that I draw upon my insights from that. And I just feel that going into the 2020s, this is going to be one hell of a decade. This is going to be like, this decade will be like nothing the world has seen before. We have got the aging baby boomers, the millennials coming into, management leadership positions. We've got 2/3 of the world's wealth being held in a very small number of hands, and it's going to have to move. We've got technology disrupting every industry. We've got political instability. We've got environmental instability. We've got 400 million people in China who have just come up out of poverty and are joining the lower level middle class of the world. And they're all got new expectations. This is a moment. And for me, the ability to get people tuned into that moment, to have them build businesses that matter, that solve meaningful problems, to solve meaningful problems myself, to make the most of this moment is success.
Amazing.
That's an awesome
good answer. Yeah, definitely. And Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. We do really appreciate it. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Just leave me alone. Just don't get in contact. Just don't get in contact with me. Just my books are on Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm active on social media, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. We run events. We do this thing called the Key Person of Influence scorecard, where I took a bunch of thinking around Key Person of Influence, put it into a scorecard. If you Google Key Person of Influence scorecard, you'll find it. And it's 40 questions. It gives you a score at the end across the 5 Ps and an overall score for how you're running your business. That's a really good way to start because it's customized, it's tailored. That data goes into our little data engine, and then we send people relevant stuff. So if that tells us that they're in an early stage, we send them stuff that's relevant. If it tells us that they're ready to scale, we send them some stuff that's ready to scale type stuff. And if we think it's worth talking and having a conversation, then a member of the team will typically get in touch and invite to either a strategy session with me or one of the team. And that's, that kind of all takes over from there.
Amazing.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, thank you very, very much for your time today. It's been a real privilege, and you've given us some outstanding insights into business, fatherhood, my pending lack of freedom. So really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers. You're going to love it. Eventually.
Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.